everybody. Russell Hill. You're watching another very successful episode of What WTF, and that's What the Fixed Ops to all of you out there. And I'm joined today by...
Hi, everybody. I'm Charity Dunning, the co-host here at What the Fixed Ops. And we have a really fun guest today, Ray Hernandez, the Divisional Fixed Ops Director at Sonic Automotive Group. Welcome to the show.
Welcome,
Thank you very
Ray.
much.
Welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Listen, I've known you for a while. We've never even met in person yet. We've been in some same places, but still haven't met. But I feel like I know Ray, and I'm really careful of some of the things I say because he knows what the hell he's talking about. I'm going to tell you. But we're regulars Sunday morning on it's called SDL, Service Drive Live, where there's a bunch of people that I've learned a tremendous amount of stuff. So I encourage everybody to also participate in that. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Joe Chambers on LinkedIn, but it's something you really don't want to miss. And that's where I've developed this relationship with Ray. And then Ray has also looked at our technology too. So he is not a client, just so you know. Hope to be one day, but we have him on here because he's very good at what he does. He knows what he's talking about. And what you are looking for is some information. And this guy has the information. So once again, thank you for joining us today, Ray.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I'd like to ask you, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got where you're at right now.
Oh, goodness. So I've been around the car business since I was very young, too young to actually admit on the show here because there were child labor laws back then that I'm sure were slightly fractured. But I started washing cars and changing oil when I was quite young at a mom and pop shop. I went on to go to school for automotive technology, Lincoln Tech. I'm a Votech kid.
I'll be done. Yeah.
I started my career as a technician, like I said, changing oil, and I became a master technician with ASE and Chevy. And for a little bit there, I did some work with Mercury Marine and Mercruiser until I decided to get out of the mechanic side of the business, technician side of the business. But that's still absolutely where my passion lies, is a technician side of the business. So that's kind of where I started. And once I got out of the business, I went to work for an extended warranty company that was owned by it was a little subsidiary company of another tiny company called Southeast Toyota. And
yeah, right.
I worked with them for 23 years. And then after that, I got into the retail side, and I just love what I do.
So you don't have all these different jobs. I mean, you cut your teeth at 23 years with Southeast Toyota?
23 years, yeah. Fun.
Your transition to Sonic was like in the last year and a half, 2 years, I believe, something along those lines. How did that come about?
So I was working with a small group, and my time there was kind of coming to an end. I had some medical things going on, and the owner and I weren't seeing eye to eye, so I took some time off, and I kind of let it be known that I was starting the search. So I got a call from my boss. His name is Eddie Robertson, and he told me about the opportunity. I've heard a lot about Sonic, and I said, that's really great. I'm very interested. It was August of 2022. And he said, look, the timeline is not like right away. It's going to take a little bit. And I said, well, that's fine because I got some personal things I got to get taken care of. And that outpatient surgery took 3 months worth of recovery that wasn't expected. So lo and behold, I wound up waiting Eddie out for the right opportunity. And 6 months later, I got on with Sonic.
Was it a rigorous process? I mean, as they vet you, you've probably vetted them too. I mean, you didn't make a move you wanted to be sure, right?
Yeah, I had other offers coming in, and it was they weren't as solid, if you will. And I vetted them, and boy, did they vet me. Several interviews. I interviewed with Eddie, obviously, and then every one of my brothers, if you will, that do the same job that I do. And then I got past that, and then I had to interview with the entire executive staff. Anybody that's title started with a C was in that room. There was 12 people altogether, and it was from the CEO, president all the way down to chief marketing and human resources, you name it. The legal counsel guy was there. I mean, everybody was there. So,
damn, was that scary?
It was a touch intimidating, but a long time ago, my daughter told me what relative to interviews. She said, "Dad, it's a business meeting, and you've been to thousands of business meetings, so just look at it like that." So that little bit of advice
From your daughter,
from my daughter, changed the way I look at that. So, but that was my sincere hope. My last interview, because I plan on just staying with this through the time that I stop working. Which who knows when that's going to be, right? We're in the car business.
Well, it's true. Since that happened, and you're not a guy that bounces, do you feel as good today, or better about what you're doing now that with the process you had to go through? Or do they pretty much live up to the things that they told you that they would do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They one thing I could say about Sonic is their turnover is extremely low, and they tell me that their turnover is the lowest in the industry. Now I don't have the firsthand knowledge to count people at the different public companies, for example, but I can tell you our turnover is very, very low. The number is around 30% company wide, and that's all areas. And they really emphasize promoting from within. So I happen to be a lucky one that managed to get in from the outside. And, I secretly wonder if they're still thinking, what did we do? So we let this outsider in, but I'm happy for the opportunity, and hopefully I'm proving them right.
Well, you're on the inside now.
Yep, absolutely.
How many stores are there approximately?
Sonic all in is in the 120, 130 range as far as franchise new car stores. And then they have some Echo Park Automotive stores that are
Echo Park.
retail.
I didn't know that was Sonic. Okay.
Yep, that's Sonic. And then they also have ventured into the power sports world. The most iconic power sports store that they bought Black Hills Harley Davidson in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I believe is where it's located. It's, the classic Sturgis.
That's a classic name right there. Yeah,
no doubt. And then another portion of Sonic is Speedway Motorsports. That was the founder's passion, Bruton Smith, and they own a couple of racetracks and some other pretty interesting things.
Must be nice. They probably got planes and helicopters and all that stuff too, I'm sure.
Yeah. I can't talk to that stuff, but yeah, I'm sure there's a few.
Yeah. Charity, please, question.
Yeah. Well, I did some research on you, Ray, and I looked through your LinkedIn profile and at your history, and you have so much experience and there's so much to ask you. So I have a few different topics, but I thought I'd start with one of the ones that I thought was the most interesting first. So you've said it's better to live on your feet than to die on your knees. And I thought it would be interesting for you to unpack that for us.
Yeah, so has more to do with managing from fear. We all have those times in the retail automotive space where we're thinking, man, I can't afford to lose that person because, the business is this. And sometimes you wind up doing things or accepting things that you really shouldn't be accepting because you're afraid of what the outcome is. And, it's really difficult to get over that manage from fear mentality. But the older I get, the more I find that when that scenario happens where the person that you didn't want to leave leaves, you always seem to wind up on your feet, right? And it's funny, I find that the harder I work, the luckier I am. So the reality is I tend to do okay with that. And most recently I just got back yesterday, or excuse me, this morning, and we had a manager leave without notice. And I showed up at the store, and we have a world-class general manager at that store. When I got to the store, you usually don't find the general manager anywhere near the service department, especially where the service manager just left with no notice. Well, I found her sitting in the service manager's office, and she was, keeping the dream alive and making sure everybody knew that.
Wow.
Without support. And so I got there thinking, wow, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I've got to put everybody back together, make sure everybody's happy. And God, she had already started it. And so I think we're better off. And as fate would have it, the manager that walked out my last day, late last night, he showed up and said, was proceeded to tell me about, why he left and this general manager is this and that. And I said, really, why'd you show up? Just go. And well, people are calling me. I said, you know what? If people are calling you because they want to go with you, take them. Because he's trying to frame it like, hey, I'm doing you some sort of favor by not taking your people. If somebody wants to go, then why are you staying? If it's so bad, go. Well, I'll tell you, he won't take anybody because it's not so bad. It's a really, really good store, and the group of people work together very, very well. And those types of scenarios where you're managing from fear, where that guy says, "Hey, I'm going to leave if you don't." The older I get, we've all heard that scenario, do this or else. Well, the older I get, the more I opt for or else.
Wow. That's pretty deep right there. I got to tell you, I have with when I was in retail, the same thing. I'd be afraid to lose somebody, and I would concede to certain things that otherwise I wouldn't normally concede to. And ultimately they ended up leaving anyway. And I was always better off that they did. So I've learned this lesson again recently where we talked to somebody and they were done, but we don't execute the bye-bye the right way. So with the doors open for them to continue to talk their way back in. And I've let that happen a couple of times and learned very valuable lessons. Just make the cut and go on down the road because ultimately you're going to end up there anyway. And I'm very careful. It never, ever, always. But when I do that, it always ends up biting me in the ass. And ultimately, I'm better off by them going down the road. Those have all turned in to be the or else.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, if somebody does the right thing, there's an opportunity, and you don't want to hold anybody back, right? If they really think that the grass is greener, I'll do my best to explain why it is or it isn't. And if it is, and they truly believe it is, then leave the right way under the right terms. And if there's opportunity to come back, then everything's good, right? And there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. But allowing yourself to get caught up in the emotion of something, and then I'm leaving. Okay, well,
yeah,
right. Why are you still here, right? But again, do it right. Do things respectfully. Everybody speaks about the 2-week notice or whatever. I worked with the Napleton group. I had 2 tours of duty with them, and it's another fantastic group that I did some work with. And when I left, they asked me to give notice. They wanted me to give a month, and instead of giving 2 weeks, I gave 3. But they invited me back again, and I feel confident that if I ever need to look for them again, then they'll take me on a third time, because I I always operate with a high level of integrity, right?
Yeah, that's very important. They were our largest client with my first company, and I think they're all still on the same CRM, Car Research. I got to meet a lot of those people. They're a really good operation, or at least everything that I saw.
I enjoy them. Love the family, good people.
So accountability is a big thing with you, and it's a key characteristic. How does that happen? What does accountability mean to you? Why? How does that work for you?
It's a personal thing, right? And I tend to, nobody really holds me more accountable than I hold myself. Do I do everything right? No, not by a long shot, man. I have more plates hitting the floor than I keep spinning a lot of days. But at the end of the day, I hold myself accountable as hard as I possibly can. And I make mistakes, and when I make a mistake, usually nobody has to call me on it. But if they do, I say, you know what? I'm sorry. You're right. I didn't execute that, or I didn't get this done, or I didn't follow the right process or whatever. But I admit that, hey, I didn't do something, and I move on. And it's kind of diffuses the situation, right? But if you tend to stoke that fire of, well, I didn't do it because, no, I didn't do it. I don't, whatever the reason is irrelevant. It's an excuse, right? So I identify the excuse as an excuse, reason, whatever you want to call it, and just kind of move past and see what I can do.
Yeah, it's really, there was a time in my life where it was never my fault. There's always somebody else to blame. And what I've noticed, a real sign of maturity, just because they're a man or they're a woman doesn't mean they're mature. They're still victims. They're still blaming other people. And that's a real indicator, especially when I'm talking to people and they don't take ownership of where they're at, because you ultimately, well, so-and-so made me, no. You allowed that to happen. You made the ultimate choice. Well, I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. Your choice was not to make a choice, but that was a choice, right?
I'm not responsible for teaching anybody right or wrong. At my age and at the age of employment, they've usually learned right or wrong from their parents, family, probably before the time they were 12 years old, right? So, what right and wrong is. And you can, I've had people, well, nobody trained me. Well, and I had a manager one time tell me that nobody trained him that he needed to have repair orders signed. So, wow, okay. And come to find out he had a background that was a finance manager. Who knows more than a finance person that you need to have signatures? But, nobody trained me. I needed a signature. Well, that's
a cop out.
Yeah. And once it gets past the logical, I didn't know, great. But, when your excuse is nobody trained me to do something that is that simple, I very seldom say this to anybody when I'm in that position, because it becomes more of an emotional reaction. But, I didn't teach you how to breathe and somehow you're still alive.
Exactly. Right. I want to circle back around to something you said earlier about general managers not getting anywhere near service around the fixed ops departments. And I always wonder, is that true in general? Are general managers, do they kind of avoid that area? Do they fear going over there? And why do you think they do that? What do you think they're missing out on?
The reality is it's a comfort level, right? The fact is the majority of general managers, dealer principals, et cetera, come from a variable background. They come from the new car, used car side of the world, the finance side of the world, and that's their comfort level, right? That's their comfort zone. And, back in service where those crazy mean mechanics are, and then those screaming customers are, and those, oddball parts people are, who wants to hang out back there? I got all these variable people telling all kinds of great stories, and I'm not going to hang out where the business is getting done, or where these people are really running around making things happen, right? So, the average new car salesperson sees, 1 to 3 customers a day, and the average service advisor sees anywhere from 12 to 20. And, it's just a lot busier and they avoid it. And then, typically service is not nearly as happy as a transaction as the new car sale or used car sale, right? You're happy, oh, I got my new car. And, service is, I got to maintain this thing or this POS broke, right? So they run from it. It's normal. Now, I'm blessed where I have a few general managers that I worked with over the years, and platform directors and regional vice presidents that are not afraid to get down and meet with technicians and just really be in the trenches. But by and large, it's the very, very minority that are involved in the fixed operation.
It really is. And some of my presentations when I'm talking to people, it's unfortunate that 80 to 85% grew up on I grew up on the variable side. I've learned so much from you and the Ed Roberts of the world and Dave Foy's and Joe Chambers, Michael Barrett's, the MFTT and all that kind of stuff. It's really, and it's a different culture. It took a lot longer. I remember early on with Fixed Ops Mastermind, but before I met you, early into COVID, I was in this room with all these guys that I just mentioned. And Ed Roberts said, there was vendors coming in and out all the time, but they were looking for a quick, to meet somebody type thing. And I just kept showing up every Tuesday. I kept showing up, listening, talk sometimes, et cetera. And Ed said, I asked how, he said, fixed ops is different than variable, Russell. Look, these men and women are harder to get to know. And they're particularly turned off by vendors because you've seen what's happened. They come and they go and they reach out trying for a quick sale, et cetera. And then you don't see them anymore. You just keep showing up. And after time, they're going to know who you are and what you're about. and then they'll start reaching out to you, or if you can reach out to them, and they're going to be okay with that. And I found that to be a completely true statement in different culture of people altogether. But even I is there still a divide today as far as you're concerned with the variable and the fixed side?
Yeah, I think it's getting better, and it's one of the things about our business is, in a good economy, the fixed operation side does okay. In a bad economy, the fixed operation side does better. So the reality is, when there's no money to buy a car, people are fixing them, and when there's money to buy a new car, we get trades, right? So we tend to weather a lot of those storms. And the other side, now COVID was like the inverse of that, right? There was an economic downturn that turned into a boom for the variable side, right? But now we're going through the withdrawal of that right now, and you're not seeing these massive front end grosses anymore. And guess what? Now we're back to refocusing on our fixed teams, right? And we're focusing on our technicians and making sure that our technicians are treated well and with respect. And there's an old saying, he who dies with the most toys wins. I tend to think that he who dies with the most techs wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like a pendulum, right? Swinging from one side to the other, depending on the health of the market. And, you brought this up. You're a very technician-centric dealership. And I wanted to ask you specifically, how are you set apart as far as being technician-centric?
So we are very much focused on technicians. So, for example, we do a tenure bonus for our technicians, and it's a progressive bonus depending on how long you've been with the company, and it goes quite high for every hour turned, and it's paid kind of like a Christmas bonus from the timing of it. But every hour that the technician turns, there's a kind of a Christmas club being set aside, and the longer you've been with us, the bigger that Christmas bonus is. In 2023, we paid out $5.2 million in longevity bonus. The average across the enterprise was 1,750 technicians, and just under $3,000 average.
Wow.
The high payout was $29,000, if my memory serves.
Wow!
So that's a decent bonus, I would say, in many circles. Let alone a technician world, right? But these are high producing individuals, and they're rewarded, and that's just one way. And we shop the markets to make sure that we are above average in our markets relative to comp and things like that. We have additional benefits for our technicians. So, for example, the individual medical benefits program for a technician is complimentary. It's not complimentary to the whole family, but if it's just the technician, it's a complimentary medical benefit. And there's so many things I couldn't even begin to tell you all, but we tend to treat our technicians more like people. And
really strange you say people, right? Yeah.
Well, again, true. My experiences are amazing. I had a meeting with a group of technicians in Pittsburgh one day, and I thanked them for their time and whatever. And at the end of the meeting, we're kind of breaking up, and the one technician came over and thanked me, and he said something that was so profound to me, I will never forget it. He said, "We just want to be heard." And it's like, well, duh. I mean, why would we not want to listen? But they felt like they had no voice. And it's funny, whenever I meet and talk with technicians, a lot of people are afraid that the things they're going to bring up are going to turn into a bit of a gripe session, right? For not using the other description of that meeting. But I will tell you 90+% of the time, what they bring up makes sense. Like, one of the big asks in that meeting in Pittsburgh was they wanted one of those mirrors to put on the corner of the building because they were coming around a pretty tight turn and they didn't want to hit each other. It's like, yeah. Well, wow, that's a big ask. And how dare you ask for such a thing to prevent us from having damage, right? So, and the mirror probably cost $50 to $100. And, the aggravation alone of having damaged somebody's car, forget about the dollar amount of it. And it was a Highline store. So, yeah, easy ask, right?
Easy. And and you've heard me probably say this because I talk about this all the time. Almost as much as breathing air, all people want to know is that they count, they matter, they make a difference, and they're a part of something and not an island. And even something like that, the way you introduced that was almost like in some organizations, if they say it, they'd get their head bit off, with an idea or suggestion. And that's listening with empathy. Listen, I don't know everything about you, but I have gotten to know you. I know you're a Cowboys fan, right?
Absolutely. And proud of it too.
All right. So, yeah, me too. The other thing is, I know you're a family man. You're married. You got children. Tell me about your family and how you balance and work that, because you are on the road all the time. Can you share some examples with us?
Well, the kids are a little bit easier now because they're grown. My son's 26 and my daughter will be 30 at the end of this month. And, they have their own lives, and they still, they still occasionally need me to call them and counsel them and give them some money, et cetera. But
say it ain't so. Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're two great kids. And I can't say enough good about my wife. She's been putting up with me for, gosh, almost 35 years. I know I don't look it, but God, it's going to be 32 years that I'm married this May.
Wow.
And my wife has put up with a lot, and she's learned to cope with the traveling. And, our dog is our best friend now because the kids are gone. So, he helps bridge the gap. And sometimes she'll come travel with me, but, she works as well. And, it just kind of works for us. It's never really been, oh my God, you're traveling. Sometimes it gets a little old, and, we got to take a little bit of time off the road. But
sure,
I'm actually at my happiest when I'm working in the stores and training managers and training people and talking to technicians. And I had some great meetings yesterday with technicians. Just makes me happy, to understand what they're thinking and teach them what we're looking at, right? And
Yep.
It's amazing when you explain things to technicians about productivity and how that rolls up to the financial statement, and their eyes. Two technicians yesterday told me nobody's ever taken the time to explain it to me, and these are guys that have been technicians for more than a decade.
Let me guess, at this very moment, another vendor is walking up to your lot with something shiny to sell. Before you head back and hide in your office, let me take a minute to tell you about my friend Dawn Pelham and my friends over at Global Dealer Solutions. They exist to help you find solutions to problems, some of which you might not even know you have. Best of all, they can manage as many products and services as needed for you, helping cut down on multiple vendor visits and distractions. And if you need anything, you have one number to call or text for the response all dealers like to hear. On it, GDS understands that successful dealerships require more than a set it and forget it mentality. And they'll be with you every step of the way, from setup, implementation, training, and support. And if necessary, they'll even cancel non-performing products for you. No pushback, no arguments, just a solutioneer executing course corrections as needed. Check out gdsdealers.com to learn the difference and set up a time to meet. Let's see if they're a good fit for you.
And they're master technicians, and nobody explained to them how what they're doing here impacts what's happening over here. And they were thankful for the knowledge. And they were texting me last night. One of them actually said, "Hey man, have a safe trip home." I was like, I just met this guy. I thought it was kind of cool.
That makes a huge, huge impact. Congratulations on the family and the marriage. Are you a granddad yet?
No, and in no rush. Unlike several others, like, I got these grandkids. When God sees fit to bless us with grandchildren, then that's when it'll happen. And
Yep.
I'm not one to push him along whenever the decision is.
Yeah. Stay out of that part, because you can lose on that one. When they're ready, right?
It's God's will.
Yep, it is God's will. I'm like you. I'm really blessed. Most of the time, I like being in stores too. And most of the time, I'm stuck right here, building this company and being on meetings all the time. And when I do have to travel, my wife, because she retired 3 years now from being in the car business, 32 years as a controller, and she joins me sometimes. Matter of fact, we got married during Digital Dealer at Vegas, 13 years ago. But our relationship really works because she knows what I'm doing, and and I pay attention to her, but she doesn't guilt trip me like, why don't you spend more time with me? Do you have to go here? Do you have to do that? And I'll tell you what, it makes me doing what I'm doing a lot better, having that kind of support. So kudos to you, because a lot of times that doesn't happen. It doesn't really happen. And what you said about the text, just explaining that kind of stuff, that made their day, Ray. I could feel it when you were talking about it. They got it. And it's like, why? There's so much more. Now, next time you're in the store, you're going to have to share something else with them, right?
Oh, yeah. And listen, I look forward to it. And I look forward to, transacting with them. I give them my phone number and say, hey, call me. And again, last night they're texting me, and the one guy's texting me. It was 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. He's texting me. He's going to send me some document. I said, hey, enjoy the time with your family. Tomorrow's fine. He goes, okay, tomorrow then. But, he was ready to send me what I was asking for on the spot. And it's like, don't get me wrong. I appreciate that, because I have very little patience. But he didn't need to get it to me that moment. Right. So I was just thrilled that he was willing to give me the information that I asked for happily.
Yeah. I don't see you as having a very little patience. I guess there's a side of you I don't think I ever want to experience, but I really don't see that. Thanks for sharing that. That means a lot. Sherry, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I'm rolling this around in my mind. We talk to a lot of people on the show, and we hear a lot about technician issues with recruiting, training, retention. And I want to ask you specifically, since you're very technician centric, where does that problem come from? What is a solution to it? Like, why are they so underrepresented? What can people do about it that are having that problem?
Gosh, that's a great question.
It
And I
is.
wish
A
I could
little
really,
loaded too. So sorry.
yeah, I wish I could really unlock the truth behind that. But the reality is there's so many issues that the technicians bring up, and compensation is one of them. But believe it or not, compensation is not the top issue. How they're paid is very important, obviously, but engaging with them, training. The number one issue that I found is the willingness to make the investment to train them. Right, it's the famous quote by Sir Richard Branson: train them well enough to where they're able to leave, and treat them well enough so that they don't. And, I want to train
Wow.
and train and train and get the guys to be master level. And when I train them, by the way, when the higher you get in your training, the more we're going to pay you. So, the mindset in some worlds is, well, don't spend a lot of money on training because A, you don't want to spend the money, but B, if you train them and make them really valuable, then they might leave you, or you'll have to pay them more. Okay.
That's
And,
poor
there's
leadership.
also, it really is. And there's a mindset out there that I fight all the time, where you hear these guys saying, well, I don't need these master techs. And well, you know what? All the master techs you don't want, send them my way. I don't need a master tech to change oil. Well, that may be true, but the master techs are the ones that keep you out of 90% of the problems, right? That group of technicians are the ones that are fixing the difficult diagnosis cars, or the angry customers. Those are the ones that you can lean on to help get you out of the grease when you have a problem child, right? So it's great to have, okay, I'm going to match my skill set to the job and the comp level. And that's an ideal world. I mean, if you have that set up perfectly, well, good for you. But I would never not give a gravy job to a master tech because I have an hourly tech that is not hitting his number. I got to find the way to get that hourly tech productive as well, but not at the sacrifice of the master tech, if that makes sense. So, we were talking yesterday again, for example, and we want to send cars to an express shop because we want to get them out quickly, and that's an industry problem, right? Getting work done quickly and meeting customers' expectations. But do you send a 5,000 mile car that got nothing wrong with it to a master tech to change the oil? No. But would you send a 100,000 mile car to a master tech to look it over and advise a customer properly and better than perhaps an entry level tech?
No doubt.
My answer to that is always yes, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter that it's going to cost me a little bit more because that tech's rate is higher. I'm just going to provide a better quality job for the guest, right? So I'm not, in that case, matching the skill level of the job to the comp level of what that skill set is worth. I'm matching that vehicle need to the person that's best suited to give the best
Sure.
experience to the customer.
Great.
Do you think of everything sort of in numbers as far as, how long people have been there, how much they're paid, how much training they get, who goes where for the most productive times, and, et cetera, et cetera? Is it all sort of a spreadsheet in your head?
So depends on the training. Like, for example, manufacturer training, there's a lot of stipulations that you have to be ready for. There's prerequisites to training, right? So you have to have certain things done on their side first to be able to send them to training, right? Because if they don't have the prerequisites done and you send them to training, they may or may not achieve that next level of certification because the prerequisites aren't done. And sometimes they'll be able to get into a class without some prerequisites, that aren't necessarily demanded. Maybe prerequisites is the wrong word, but if you're not done with the online training, you haven't completed the circle. So, I'll get an email from a manufacturer rep and have them say, listen, these 6 people out of this store of 20 technicians are the ones that we should be sending to school because they have done the most of the prerequisites, right? And then by the same token, when I'm talking to technicians, I'll have that same conversation with them. Have you done what you need to do to be able to be the front runner of training, right? And if I have a shop full of technicians that are ready to be trained, then I'm going to train a shop full of technicians.
Wow.
Nice.
If you, I've heard this in other rooms where somebody brought up that people are taking their technicians and they weren't I'm sure they were because of the guy himself, but he was complaining about, they offered him $3 or $4 an hour. And no, that's not why they left. They left because of management, not because they were unhappy. Their environment was toxic. They didn't leave for 3. Now, is there some that probably do? Yeah. But in the overall scheme of things, don't you think it's really management?
Yeah. Russell, I find that more technicians quit their boss than quit their store. That's as an over under, that is. But, at the end of the day, if people are treated right and they feel like they're part of a bigger team and family, they're not going to bounce over a few pennies. But my thought on that is if they're worth a few pennies, why are they having to come and tell me?
Yeah.
Right? I need to be coming to them and say, oh, by the way, we did our market study, we did our homework, and we found that the market for this level technician is X, and you're not there. So we're going to meet you. We're going to get you there without you having to come and ask.
That's huge. That's so proactive versus the opposite. How many stores do you oversee?
I have 30 stores right now that I oversee.
My God. That's did you do the same thing at Southeast Toyota too?
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly similar. Obviously, Southeast Toyota was one brand, and
Right.
The highest number of stores I remember having with Southeast Toyota was 18. And this is a little different because there's different responsibility, right? So when I was with Southeast Toyota, I never really had to worry about who was going to show up to work the next day or if there was a management change or something like that. Here, I'm much more involved with the personnel side, but we service our dealerships by brand. So I call on Toyota, Lexus, Honda, and Nissan, and all over the country. So I travel a little bit more than normal because we don't cover a geographical standpoint, but
Sure.
it makes things a lot easier to manage. So if I have a problem in a Honda store with, let's say obsolete parts inventory, which, God, that never happens to anybody. I have 11 other Honda stores that can help me clean that up, right? So because it's obsolete in store A doesn't mean it's obsolete in store G, you know what I mean? So it helps us really do a better job with our team. And the reality is it helps me better understand that brand. So if there's an issue with one of my Honda stores, for example, in the past, you have 5 different people trying to convey the message to the stores because they're calling on a geographical area. And now it's just me. And I interact so much better directly with the manufacturer. They seem to love it. The message is very clear. There's no misunderstandings. Every one of my manufacturing partners have been really supportive of the way we're doing this deal by brand.
With all the interactions you have, just from what I heard, and I could be wrong, but you really enjoy engaging with the technicians and being involved and helping where you can, helping them understand, helping them go to the next level. They seem to genuinely know that and believe that. But I don't think that's true for other people that do what you do, not necessarily in Sonic, but other types of organizations. Where did that style come from?
I think for me, it's my background, obviously. There's quite a few of us that have started way down in the trenches, cleaning cars and, portering, et cetera, et cetera. And I've met many people have started down in the bottom and worked their way up in the fixed operations. But my passion is really from starting as a technician and just kind of knowing what they're going through and understanding what they're going through and just hearing them out, right? And just listening to the deal and just, hey, there's stuff that they're going to bring up to you and you won't be able to fix. Hey, we want this new facility. Okay, well, I'm on the board over here and I'm going to make sure that we get to that one day, but that's not a today thing, but I need to get trained or I need to get, anything that's reasonable. We're going to give them, right? And Sonic really is embraced that deal. I mean, it like I said, the turnover is extremely low as a big company like this, and I think we just do a better job treating our technicians well, not just the pay and benefits and so on and so forth, but just listening.
It's amazing how simple it gets. You continue, at least my take from the interactions I have with you, primarily on Sunday. You listen, and people say things that you comment on, and so do you do anything ongoing other than that? But do you have mentors and people that you look to and you listen to? How do you continue to stay focused and fixed on where you're going and not getting caught up in the quagmire of all the crap that you might encounter? What keeps you going, Ray?
That's a great question. It's an interesting question. I was thinking about mentors because it's a topic we're covering in an upcoming meeting here. But really, my mentor, there's many of them, right? But the one that really stands out to me as far as training goes was a man named Terry Carlisle. He ran a little company called Adcon, and just a fantastic trainer, and taught us the ins and outs of financials and the numbers, right? So I learned the numbers pretty well. He had a class that we did called Advanced Financial Management. And I went to the class once and it was so intriguing. And then I figured out a way to worm my way into a second time that I went to the same class, and I learned more the second time. And then I convinced my boss at the time that it would make a whole lot of sense if we would invite general managers to this training because they would get a lot out of it. And then I covertly convinced them that if I was going to get a general manager to go, I really should go with them because that would make sense. And I wound up taking that class with Terry Carlisle 8 times. Same class, same basic material, and every time I got something else out of it. And so now I speak to stuff relative to the numbers, very second nature, but it's really understanding those numbers and how they get there, right? Because they really start with a technician. There's no numbers if there's no technician, right? So
Right.
At the end of the day, really understanding the correlation between the two, and then being able to explain it again, and especially explaining it to technicians. You think I've heard people say, "Well, what do they need that for?" And if I would tell you some of the statements that I've heard from people that are not technicians, I had someone in an accounting position once say that they don't need this or they don't need that, and it's like I'm thinking to myself, and your job is to count the money that they make. But you're going to say what they don't need, right? I mean,
They don't understand, do they?
right? You have no idea what you're talking about. But hey, at the end of the day, it all starts with our technicians, and that's where the passion and you mentioned mentors and learning, and I had hit a spot for a while there where I was convinced I knew everything. I mean, I was absolutely sure of it, and then I start looking into more stuff, and I get involved with groups like Service Drive Live, and I realize that I don't know what I don't know. So I'm a student every day. I love what I do. I love training people. I love bringing people along. I love getting that message from somebody that says, "Hey, you taught me so much." I recently called a guy that I worked with many years ago because I had a family member in West Palm Beach that had a problem with their car. And when I called them and asked for a little bit of favor, I said, "Man, just tell me what I could do. How can I make it right for you?" He goes, "Are you kidding me? You taught me so much. This is the least I could do." And that's the kind of gratification that him saying that was an incredible
Well,
statement.
it sounded like for him. And did you know you had that kind of impact? Because it sounded like how you just responded, what his response was, he was happy just to be able to, he was honored just to be able to help you out and do something for you. And you already did it. Did you know that at the time? It's amazing how we don't know yeah.
And listen, I'll tell you a funny one. Early on in my career, I had a guy that I worked with. His name is Albert, and he was making the transition from parts manager to service manager, and that's not an easy transition because the boxes don't talk back, but the customers do, right? So, and then so he came on, and he was a great guy, but he struggled a little bit early on. And Russell, I kid you not, he would come to my house after work, and he would lay on the couch, and I'd be talking to him, and I felt like I needed to put a cold compress on his head and be like, "He'll be okay." And then he's done. I get him up and get back in the ring, man. And he's a very successful fixed ops director today. And I would tell you that he would say nice things about me, but really, it was just a fantastic student.
Yeah, I don't think people really understand. I think sometimes I do and I don't. The impact we have on people, everybody we encounter, that we have some kind of impact. And I just like people to know that I'm listening, that more than anything, or open a door for somebody or say something kind or something. We have no idea how that comes back to us instead of no. One pet peeve I have is that, hey, I did a favor for you and you owe me. I'm so out on that. It's not even funny. It's like I don't keep track of that. Well, what do you want? Look, if I can make an introduction, I'll make an introduction. I don't want anything for it. I'm going to get paid back anyway. I mean, you reap what you sow. You really do. And you're the kind of guy that believes that and operates at that level. So people need to hear more of that. And we're kind of really at the end, and now we don't ever get through all the questions, but I got to tell you, Charity comes up with some pretty thought-provoking ones, as you've heard. Sherry, do we have any additional questions that?
Well, I have lots, but okay. I think I'll narrow it down a little bit. We've touched on them, most of them in a way, but were you able to go to NADA this year, Ray?
I was not. It's I love talking to vendors, but I really prefer working with business partners. So I get so many vendor calls, and I could help you. And it reminds me back in the day when there was a gas crisis, and everybody had this great product that would help you save fuel. And if you put all these things on your car, you'd have to pull over a mile or two to let some gas out, right? At the end of the day, I look for those business partners that say, "Hey, you know what? You're not using this product in this store of yours, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel it for you instead of let the meter keep running." So I generally try to really vet out a vendor a little bit different than many.
Yeah, well, that's interesting then, because we're vendors, and we could use some secret tips as to how to get your foot in the door, or Russell would know more about this than I would. But
well, I have a feeling because I have Ray has sat down and saw our technology. There's other things involved, and I've communicated with him. But I like to believe I have a knack for just knowing when, hey, it's time to back off. Ray knows what I do, and if I was a pushy vendor, trust me, I don't even think he'd be sitting here right now. Do I got that right, Ray?
Yeah, you said it at the beginning of the show that we're not doing any kind of business together, and the reality is the marketing side, the way that Sonic is set up, that's really not my decision to make, right? I can make recommendations, etc.
Sure.
The one thing I love about what you guys do is you have a Spanish component to your
Yep.
couponing. I think that's fantastic, and does that mean we need it, or does that mean we'll work together? The reality is I don't know, but it's not this is not a business relationship. This is a professional relationship.
Yeah. You let me know that anyway, which is why, I listened, and you're not, I don't dog anybody anyway. I just don't operate that way. But you let me know, just what you said, you can influence it, but ultimately somebody else makes the decision. And I've had a meeting with a couple of those people you're talking about at the corporate level. They'll just take a long time. And if you try to force them, you're out. So I'm a vendor, but I got to tell you, I get bombarded by vendors every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Me. And I'm a vendor. I know some people, are you kidding me? Yeah, every day, because they know that I have a lot of relationships, and all they're trying to do is get inside of my Rolodex and leverage my relationships. And that dog doesn't hunt with me. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep. And that's a good point to end on. And I think integrity is a big thing too, Ray. I've read that of what you said, integrity matters in business. And that's a pretty general statement. So I wanted to see if you want to elaborate on it more.
It's God, how can you elaborate on that, right? Do the right thing. It's even when nobody's looking, and for me, it's especially when nobody's looking. At the end of the day, it's how you carry yourself, and do you do things because you're spending somebody else's money, or would you do the same thing if you were spending your own money? That there's things like that, and you got to govern yourself by doing the right thing, regardless of whether or not it's the most financially or personally beneficial thing. What's the right thing to do? So I always try to govern myself by relative to business, how would I do this if I owned it? And if I owned it, would I make that investment, or would I hire that person, or would I fire that person? And I always do that. Would I go rent a car because somebody else is paying the bill, or would I take an Uber and borrow a car from the store? Things like that. Just simple things, right? So integrity absolutely matters. And I'll tell you this, going back to technicians, when you have no integrity, they can sniff it out of you in a second.
They can. Absolutely. And listen, my parents, I believe, laid that foundation for me, but I got way off track for a long time, but I ended up coming back to it. And I had this moment with my son years and years ago. We're walking down the cereal aisle at Walmart. Okay. And there's a gallon of milk stuck in the bin where the cereal is. Okay. And so somehow, I don't even remember exactly, but he's wanting to do something like that. There was another time, and I made him take it back. And I said, let me tell you what happens, Ryan. How that gallon of milk got there, they didn't want to go back and put it where they got it. So they looked to the left of them. They looked to the right of them to make sure nobody was watching them. And then they stuck that gallon of milk there. Okay. It's all that matters is what you do. Okay. It really does. That's just somebody taking shortcuts, and it ends up costing a lot of people. So people get something for nothing, or people get nothing from something. It's just, you reap what you sow eventually down the road. And I've always respected and admired that about you, because we don't have a lot of people, at your position on here, that's able to share that kind of stuff. And it's really amazing, because I've equally met actually more people like you that don't operate like you do. They don't have that same level of character and integrity, and holding people accountable. And you're an accountable kind of guy. I would hate to get on your rough side. I really would. I don't think I'd put myself in that position, because I know when to back off and not do that. I've been blessed with that knack, but I've learned some hard lessons. But I listen to you, and there's a lot of people that listen to you, because your name comes up outside of SDL and other places. You have a lot of respect and admiration because of the way you conduct your life and the way you conduct your business. So applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're really kind of out. Let me ask you this. You have a minute left. Is there anything that you would like to say that's on your heart or on your mind that you'd like to say that you think somebody might need to hear?
So the only thing that I think that I can elaborate on just even a little bit further, to tell you what the way I feel about technicians and even technician training, especially technician training, because we touched on that, but that's a really deep subject. And, I always try and put things in terms of a variable spin, right? Because variable and fixed is the same business. We just have different names, right? Variable rights, buyer's orders, fixed rights, repair orders, right? You
Right.
have used car inventory, we have parts inventory, right? You do a finance menu, we do a maintenance menu. It's the same business, right? But one of the things that they do in the variable side is it's called prefacing for their inventory, right? You preface for the right vehicles to make sure you're getting the cars that are going to sell in your market. If you're in a Land Cruiser market, you don't want a bunch of Corollas or vice versa, right? And you may not want the cars that have, four-wheel drive in a non-four-wheel drive market. So you got to get that inventory just right.
That's right.
To be able to serve your market. Well, that's what technician training is. It's prefacing for your inventory. It's made your technicians, it's technician time inventory. And when you have very high skilled, very high trained technicians, you have prefaced for the best technician time inventory you can possibly get. And when you have that, what can you do? You can serve more customers, right?
Yep.
So, I look at a Bozard Ford and I see Ed, and I went to school with Ed to JTech, and it's funny because he's so intertwined in that school that nobody else has a shot at getting anything in there, and he's up there, so and so, welcome little Johnny who's graduating with 19 Ford classes, blah blah blah, and he's standing there, you got little Johnny with his mom and dad, and in comes Ed to photobomb, like he's going to work for me, that's the kind of thing that he's got it right. I'd be shocked. I would bet you that a guy like Ed probably never advertised for a technician in his life.
No, he does. Have you ever been to a store?
I have not been to a store. I know
Oh
Ed,
my gosh.
Professionally, but I have not been to the store, and I'm afraid if I go there, I'll be insanely jealous.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had the honor to get a personal tour from him a couple of years ago, and I mean, it's an experience, and I can't even tell somebody really. It needs to be experienced to actually see it. I mean, from dust being on stuff that's high up, you think nobody pays attention to, you name it, and the way he takes care of and interacts with his people. And you're right. I think he's number 3 in the world now as far as volume. But I recently heard, and Ed, if he's listening to this, I'm sure he will, that somebody comes in for oil change, is in and out, including getting the car washed in 21 minutes. How do you do that? I mean, that's all process and people that are bought in, and they got a system, and it's great. He told me what he goes through when people come over from these tech places, how they start, where they start, what they do, how they move and find their niche. They start out one way and end up over here in trim because they got a knack for it. It's really amazing. I know we're out of time. Hey, everybody, and this is ending the chapter of a very successful episode of WTF, and that's what the Fixed Ops with Ray Hernandez. Thank you so much for blessing us today, Ray. We're really grateful you came on.
Yes,
thanks so much for having me. Thank you so much, Charity.
Yeah.